I'm hoping program
Sorry.
to obviously just learn a little bit more about being a leader, both in an HR capacity and just in my interaction with the different employees. So
Cool. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too.
Cynthia, you're up.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Gentry. I live in New Britain. I am the grants and contracts specialist for a nonprofit in Hartford, Connecticut. Still trying to figure out what it is I want to be when I grow up, but the main purpose of this course is because my operations is that I want to go into public policy and work my way into local politics and work my way up.
Nice.
Rebecca.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Sollins and I live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I work at Cornell College, which is a small residential liberal arts college. I worked in the career office for 5 years, and I've been in student life and student activities for 2 years. And just interested in earning more than what we sell at Cornell College. Have wanted to go back for a while and consistently leading new teams and that kind of thing, and just interested in bettering myself and earning some additional letters.
Nice. Gotta make a collection, right?
Well, and Rebecca, you're heading up new student orientation now, right?
Cool.
She's working with placement previously, right? Career services, and now jumping ship to the new folks coming in. Kate.
Okay. I feel like my story is not as lovely as everyone else's. So I am Kate Moore. I'm from Weathersfield, and live there now too. And so my joining this program was not as like great and moving as a story as everyone else's. Our company went through, I worked for the National MS Society, and we went through a couple rounds of layoffs, tons of furloughs last year. And it was one of those kind of like epiphany moments of like, okay, should this be happening? Like not knowing where things are going, you know, what is next? And like, how am I going to build myself to that next level, and what is that going to look like? And so truly this program came up in an Instagram ad. And so I was like, oh, this looks kind of interesting. And my sister,
I know, right?
my sister works at the elementary school around the corner. And she
cool.
actually did some adjunct work here too, teaching. And so she signed me up for the like info course, or info session on this.
Wow.
So
Sounds
yeah.
like a teacher, right?
It was really. She was like, hey, just so you know, I signed you up for this. I was like, oh, okay. And so I actually went into it. And of course, Sandy, I was like, just so you know, I'm not going to do this program. I just want to hear a little bit more info on it. And then by the end, I was very sold. So for me, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying it, Eric, but it's classes like this that I've dabbled in, but not gotten able to really like drive that work. So it's getting these experiences like on my own to be able to kind of move forward work-wise. So it wasn't, these guys have much more like motivating stories. Mine was like, oh crap, COVID happened. Like what's next? Like what is life gonna look like?
Yeah.
I'll join this program. So I'm loving it though.
That's cool.
Joanna.
My name is Joanna Quesada. I live in Hartford. I've been, well, Goldwyn has been my home, like since I started ESL, the program of ESL. I joined this program because I want to improve my skills as a leader, as a personal, and I'm learning a lot from all my friends here now, getting the experience I need to move on professional.
Yeah. Very cool.
Sal.
Well, my name is Sal. I'm a lifer student.
Nice.
Not much. Just,
Come on, Sal, you got more than that.
I'm not that, no. Just,
Where do you live, Sal?
you don't need to know
Oh my God.
How long have you been wearing that hat? Right, like, I'm thinking that
that.
hat.
I live right down the
sounds
street. I'm like
like-
2 minutes away.
Everybody's 2 minutes away.
No, I work for Walmart currently, looking for a better job and do the post office part-time.
Mhm.
And that's it. I'm just a workaholic and career student.
Nice.
So, you know, he plays down the career student thing, but he just hit me up before class talking about our matriculation agreement with University of Bridgeport and about the accounting program. So, Dolan for you. He's a good student that likes to crack the book.
Such a liar.
And Hannah,
Oh.
the wallflower, everybody. you know.
Stop it, friends. Hannah Granfield, I live in Weathersfield, not far from Kate, but I didn't know her until this cohort. I'm actually Goodwin Foundation's the director, so I work for Goodwin. My job is to raise money for our student population for scholarships and programmatic support. So that's what I do full time. The reason I am here is twofold. I always told myself that I would finish a master's before my sons graduated high school, so they're sophomores.
Oh,
So that was always my.
giddy up. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to beat them at the game. And second of all, I have always led and managed teams, but I don't have a background in my mind of how to do it, right? And so I thought it was important to, obviously to be a part of this and learn, obviously, for Goodwin, to be a better director at what I do. And similar to Kate, I talked to Sandy during COVID and I said, I'm not doing this. Like, I just want to hear about it.
So
And then,
rude.
it was actually very funny. So I am so old that there was no record of my immunization. So so I called Sandy and said, well, you know what, I'm not old, guys.
I did too. I had to call the doctor.
Yeah, me too. My pediatrician was like, who are you? So I called Sandy. I still remember, I called Sandy and I said, listen, I don't have the immunization, so I'll go into the next cohort.
Yeah.
And she literally sent me a text that said, so someone from admissions is gonna call you and we'll pick up Bobella called me. And she's like, so you're all set. Don't worry about the immunization. You have time to do a blood test. And I was like, oh, sweet Jesus. But I love it. And so I actually, honest to God, every day with donors talk about the Goodwin student population. And now I get to say I am one. So I get to see what UDL looks like. I get to experience it. I understand how passionate our teachers are. So I feel like for another way, it's helped me do my job better.
Yeah, like total credibility boost.
Yeah, I'm a legit person.
Kind of look at both sides.
Yeah.
Cool,
So,
very cool.
Yeah.
And you're a data whiz now, right?
Data, I was running data this morning and I was throwing up with Joanna. I'm like, Eric, I actually was cursing you this morning. I was like,
That's 10 points off the top, right?
no, but it's because it just naturally comes up now.
Out of principality.
No, but I was like, now I know how to do this and it's easy. And I'm like,
You give those 10 points to Joanna.
Well, part of the story you're hearing is that we work in a cohort model. So these folks are from first class to the last class together. So they've got their own thread work in where they'll communicate. And I think it was oh gosh, it was right around September, first week of September, I get a text you're our teacher. And I'm like, yeah. And then a week later, wait a minute, you're supposed to be our teacher. I'm like, no, I have you next month. Because I register for 2 classes at a time. So, but the whole class communicates and it's really solid to have that support because, life gets in the way, obviously, things happen. And it's a 20-month program going, it's a hybrid. So we do 3 hours a week in class and we load up. So there's 4 to 5 hours a week additional work that's happening in the shell of the Canvas class. So you'll see the 2 classes that I teach, we have team projects at the end. So if you're smart, you hitch your wagon to somebody that's, really, somebody that's really a go-getter, motivated, things like that, or, knows the subject matter or whatever. And in the first class we had with data, we had a huge case study on Starbucks in Tivana. And by week 3, maybe even earlier, these guys were like, this sucks. We're so tired of hearing about this. And it was the phobia of data because everybody thinks data is just a spreadsheet that spits out information and it's not. Data is what we just collected was data, these little anecdotal stories. So we kind of get that mindset and this isn't to get data scientists. This is to help people make better decisions as leaders by using data. And in the same token, now with strategy, you're doing the same way, how to build a strategic plan, the significance of it. And the case study that we're working on now, which I sent Grace the link, I don't know if you get to watch it, but it is just a couple of bozos that take over this company and just run it right into the ground. And it's such a ripe case study to just jump on and say, I would do this, I would do that, I would do that, I would do that. And I'm not joking. I've watched this thing probably 20 times. And over the weekend, I watched it again, and I still had, a good solid full page of notes of things that you just keep picking up, like each time you watch it. So, but the cohort now with the teams, these guys will feed off each other, and it's really cool to see at the end of the model presentation of like a pitch. And in this particular case, the program used to have a consulting
Yeah, I remember
semester.
that. Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
So they went away from the consulting semester and they've added a couple more electives. But what we're doing right here, we're planning, but we're also pitching it. And the goal at the end of the mod is to have a 30% increase over 3 years in net revenue. So these folks are gonna have to tear apart an income statement. They're gonna have to look at different ways in which we can compete, sustainability, all the things that you need for, for your strategic model and plan. So, but the cohort really lends to a master's grad program where you're leaning on others. You're not just kind of the running solo the whole time you're here. So
That's awesome. I want to thank you all just for taking a little bit of time during class just to, to have this. I know that you guys are really busy and there's a lot to dig into and all that, but I really appreciate just taking the time. Means a lot.
well, it's our pleasure. And they'd much rather hear about each other than hear about strategy.
I withheld the snarky comment. You're very
You guys
welcome.
are on best behavior.
Who else
Huh?
has to tell a story? Who else has to tell a story?
I only have, let's see, I
This
get
is
my-
papers, look at that.
well, I
It's like a
mean,
paper out of paper. Turn that other one, show that, show her yours,
Wow.
like.
this is what you're in for tonight.
It's like a paper on paper, like.
Paper within a paper. There was just so much I had to amend this the notes I was taking. So, so tonight we're just gonna go over, I'll spin you guys back. And I know much as you want to see your classmates, you probably want to see the board more. We're gonna break down what we're gonna get out of week 3, okay? What we expect to get out of week 3. We're gonna really pitch sustainability. Has everybody watched the Harish Manwani? Have you guys watched that video that was part of the?
Not yet.
You gotta watch it. I'm telling you, it is worth the 7 minutes and 44 seconds. It is an awesome video. And he talks about just consciously, what we think our roles are to what our real roles are once you get out into society. So then we'll break down what we have for next week. We're gonna do our external next week. We did an internal summary on Vernon Road this week. That was our assignment. That was our 2 to 4 pager, 2 to 3 pager. And just for context, there's 4 writing assignments throughout the 7.5 week mod. And the 3rd writing assignment is what the student's going to ultimately use to defend their portfolio. So they're gonna show, hey, this is how you can show you that I'm confident and I understand this particular subject matter. And previously, and I'm not sure if you guys saw this from early on, but since I've been teaching, I always will identify what I think is the assignment that's going to best allow them to build a case for their knowledge of the competency. And I believe it's course-wide now, where other professors are doing it, saying, hey, this is the one that you probably want to look at. And I have 2 pretty easy ones with data, which is competency 3, and I think strategies competency 5. So I can lay them out relatively, kind of neatly, where it's not just work on this one for the semester. And some folks really they'll have them submit their final for the competency, but ours is really the last 2 courses. The 520 in this one is really kind of like a compilation. So it shows that you're not going to necessarily be the expert on everything, but you're going to be a really good generalist and understand a lot about what's going on. And you can kind of take whatever strand you want and run with it. So let's just slide this through. So we started in putting our plan together. We worked on the internal analysis. We're going to break that down tonight with Richard and Henry. And we're going to look at later on how to do the external analysis. One of the questions we had from a student this week is, actually 2 students talking about the 4D. Is everybody good on the 4D? I think that was a no. Right?
Nope.
Nope. I agree. I mean, it's tricky because you really, I was talking to, full disclosure, Rebecca and I were talking about this because it looks really cool how it all falls into place, but it's really something that you're trying to get to that optimal quadrant, that desired quadrant, right? And you're working from, basically, you're working from weakness to strength. So you throw your SWOT down, and you've got your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, right? So we did our internal is on strengths and weaknesses, things that we can control, opportunities and threats. Why are they external?
There are
Anybody?
things we can't control.
Excellent, that's right. So we identify our items in our SWOT. Now, if we're true to ourselves, what do we recognize about our SWOT analysis?
Our weaknesses outweigh our strengths.
Becky, you're on fire tonight. She is
Thanks.
operating on Central Time, so she's got an advantage on us. Right, so we always want to make sure that we're true to ourselves and show that these weaknesses and the weaknesses and threats we're doing everything we can to uncover these things. So we want to have a long list of these things that we can pare down. And our strengths and opportunities, we want to be realistic about. So we don't want to kind of outkick our coverage and realize that, hey, look, we've got a front-loaded SWOT analysis that is not a true representation of what's happening with our organization. So you put your SWOT together, and then you imagine now for our folks that maybe, I think we'll all get this reference based on age. Remember the overhead projectors in school? So they take the clear little piece of plastic, like the little plastic sheet, and put it down with this.
Transparency.
What was that?
What is transparency?
Transparency, thank you. And then, I think it was the example that I used once was it's like if you're in bio class, they put the human torso down there. And then they're going to show you the GI tract. So they take the other transparency, Rebecca, the other one, and they lay it on top, right? So now you've got another dimension to that body that initially was just the core. Now you've got the GI. Then you can put another transparency on top of that and look at circulatory. So what we're doing with that 4D is we're then putting that transparency on top of our SWOT analysis. And we're looking to get into that desired category, the area in which we want to operate from. Because if we stick to that threat/doom category, we've got a whole pocket full of those in that lower left quadrant. The less we get out of that quadrant, the more risk we have of what happened with our friends at Vernon Road.
That's a good question.
Sure.
Okay, so this was the one piece I think I understood, but I didn't like dive into it because I wasn't sure. With the 4D, you're looking at doomed, and it's like using whatever it was, like elevating your weaknesses for your threats or to help, like, what's the wording?
Lead from weakness to fight threats.
Thank you.
Okay, that's where you're leading from.
So in my vision for this, tell me if this is right or not. The weakness is the like lack of employee engagement and whatnot. The threat is that these people will walk and find a new job.
That's an external threat or an internal threat?
Oh, so that doesn't count then.
Well, I mean, you can have both, right? So let's
Yeah.
say an internal threat is they leave.
Yeah,
So you don't have a workforce. You have 100 people on that floor, right? That's the number that they threw out to us a bunch of times. So you have 100 people.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, after round 2, how many were left? They laid off 44 the second time, 12 the first time. So they laid off 56 people.
Okay.
So over half their workforce they let go. So to them, an internal strength they thought was their workforce.
Yeah.
So that's what Stephen and with who's our consultant,
Yeah.
Jerry,
Jerry, yeah.
was telling the parent, the father and
Yep.
son, that you have a very talented workforce, like they're the strong workforce that they inherited. The company was bankrupt, they bought a bankrupt company. They didn't work in the textile industry. So they walked in leveraging the fact that they had a skilled workforce. They laid off 56 of those 100. So how valued was that resource to them at the end of the day? So it turned into a total bottom line issue. So it wasn't, to them, their internal strength ended up working from an area in which they were doing.
So if you're looking at the 4D, I see what I did there. I combined the internal, external in my head, and you can't read, that's not, I didn't write it, it's not in the paper, so don't be worried, but.
I'm not worried.
I was trying to process through, like, looking at what the explanation of the weakness to threat, and like how it would apply to what's in your SWOT.
Yes, right, but
But did I do it right? Like, the weakness is the lack of employee engagement, which would lead to, like, if you can improve the employee engagement, which is a weakness, you would help alleviate the threat, which would be people leaving.
correct. It almost look at it as the face of a cloud.
Yeah.
Where, because you're gonna progress
Yeah.
into each quadrant. But the idea is to get it out of, you don't want
Okay,
to work from an
okay.
area of weakness.
But that's what the doomed is like to take that and okay.
The
that makes
doomed is the polar opposite of the
sense. What
desired
you want to do.
category,
Yeah.
because you're losing the things that are out of your control,
Yeah,
and the things that are in your control are at a point where you can't leave from.
so you don't, okay,
So it's almost like the perfect storm, that particular
Okay.
category.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So Eric, can I ask you a question about the 4D as well?
You may not.
Well, I mean, that's.
So-
So I can't find the damn paper, but so in our PowerPoint, it says detour, desire, doomed, doubtful.
Yes,
But then we had another paper that talked about like discovery and dreaming.
yeah, I mean, the
So
4D.
just curious, because maybe I need to go back and write my paper.
Couple of sets of 4Ds in there.
Yeah, but they relate back to those same, like, everything I researched had those words as opposed to desire, detour, doomed.
Yeah, the quadrant we have in this particular PowerPoint, or last week's
Yeah.
PowerPoint, was the one that came with the shell.
Yes.
But if you look at the Stragility text,
Yes.
you'll see that it's a little more up to date,
Gotcha. Okay.
but the core is the core.
Core is the core.
It's really the vernacular that swaps around a little bit, but the premise stays the same.
Thank you.
And there's no points off for using,
I used the wrong. Well,
yeah, using delightful instead of desired.
Yeah. Okay.
Eric, I have a question.
Yes,
Sorry. I guess the other thing that threw me off about this and still continues to do so despite some additional clarity is in the diagram that we are using, it goes strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, I think. And so, but the boxes are like 1, 2, 3, 4, like clockwise, like you said.
right.
And so I think it totally depends on, it doesn't necessarily overlay the way that we want it to if you're not laying out your SWOT box that way.
Correct.
I've seen it done in a different way.
Exactly. So you want to make sure that you're working your internal to the strengths and weaknesses, and your external to the opportunities and threats. So it doesn't really spell out SWOT as nicely as we've learned it in the 520 class.
Okay.
Make sure you're aligning your strengths and weaknesses and your opportunities and threats on a separate axis where you can see.
Strengths and weaknesses are top to bottom as opposed to side to side.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
You guys follow that?
Say that- say
Yeah.
that
I
again.
have a visual if I can share it,
Yeah,
but I don't think I have the ability to share it.
I can let you share.
Cause yeah, this was the part where I was like, I just feel like I'm missing something. And so I don't know, maybe we need to write a new
Rebecca,
diagram.
because we're used to the SWOT, and so then how do those other Ds lie up to be the same? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Rebecca, you should be okay.
Okay. So this is the one that was in the book and it goes strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So it goes up, down, up, down. Most of the time when we're doing SWOT, I want to say it's, you know, it goes here, it goes SWOT. But also as we're reading this, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think that's where I was getting messed up, is because there's just, these would overlay if your strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats were in the same spaces, but they're not. And
Right, so
so that's,
you have
I
an
think,
internal,
part of the
external,
additional trouble.
internal, external cross, basically, instead of having internal, like, you can't see me, but can you guys see what Rebecca has? Like show and tell.
Maybe you can.
I'm on my Surface, so it's wicked small up here. If you want, you can, if you want to send me that screen, I'll post it. Because I'll post it with the video tonight. So everybody understand what Rebecca's saying? Like,
A lot of times people don't, so it's okay if you don't.
it's basically the intersection's off. Because the example we used in the class that we have in the PowerPoint from last week was our left side of the diagram, the quadrant, was strengths and weaknesses. And across the top, we had opportunities and threats. So our boxes aren't aligning when we drop a standard 4D in there. So your desired is not going to be where it would be if you use SWOT in a different order. The acronym was spelled out like what, north, east, south, west. All right, we can continue Sal's back.
So then for this week, okay, wait, so now my head hurts. So I may be the only one whose head hurt right now. So this week we're doing external.
Yes.
So the SWOTs are opportunity and threats.
Mhm.
Okay. And then for the 4D, we can still go through the whole clock though. Or are you asking to only take portions of it, like the?
Listen,
Because
you don't have to do a 4D.
Well, I think you said we should.
I said you should. You don't have to.
Then don't,
You
yeah.
can
Hannah.
do porter,
Don't do that.
right? You can do pesto.
I know, now I'm like,
Come on
my
now.
head hurts right now. Well, now I'm wearing my paper. No, okay.
I'm gonna ask a question that's not 4D related, because I feel like it's yeah, I'm getting a little bit overcomplicated with it. Is there, and this may be for everyone because I couldn't find it in my research, is there a year that this company closed or that the chaplains took over? Is there like a specific time frame? Because that might help with the external threats, knowing what the market was like. Was it 2003?
So the video that came out, I think is 2000, it was filmed in 2001, maybe. So I want to say it was 2000. I know I've included a link in the finals page where it says in the parentheses, spoiler alert, because it talks about the outcome. So, and how long it took these folks to, again, spoiler alert, to run this company into the ground. So you can get a timeline there, but it was early 2000s. So they're in the industry they're in, they really didn't rely heavily on technology to begin with. But if you look at some of the competitors' links that are in that page that I attached, you can see that they're just kind of light years ahead of these folks. I mean, granted, it's maybe 10 to 15 years later, but they've still done much more, just from a sustainability standpoint, more so than these folks ever thought about doing. So.
Sorry, I should have read through that further before I asked that question.
No, it's fine, because it's at literally, it's at the very, it carries over, and I think there's like 6 or 7 links on that last page, but all of the substance for the final ends like the paragraph before that. So this kind of like just, we couldn't fit it all. But it's on, I want to say the 5th page maybe of the final that we posted. It's on, and that's part of the week 1. If you scroll down to the bottom of the week 1 or module 1, it has a dedicated section with the module 1 for final information.
Well, and that link was like, if you're not great or not experienced in reading some of those kind of pages, like the link about Vernon Road was a little confusing at times because I think one of the links, like one of the listings was, whether it was like board of directors or like, so, and sometimes the chaplain's name came up, sometimes it didn't. So like, I did get a little confused as to like turnover of, like, was it turnover of board or board of directors, or was it like management type stuff? Like, I have to dive into that a little bit more because it's not like as, you know what section I'm talking about on that page?
Yeah, and if, did you reference the link arsenic and olace at all? Like there's a kind of a summary in that as well.
Oh, no, I guess I didn't see that one. Is it on that list?
It's part of the link going into it's actually part of the YouTube link. Like within the YouTube link, there's a hyperlink for
Oh, I didn't see that
arsenic
at
and
all.
olace.
No, okay.
You know, and I don't know if it happens, I don't know if it's because of my YouTube settings or not, but whenever I click on that link, the old man just starts talking. It's like he immediately starts
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
as soon as the link, it's not even like, you know, that's what the one time you're like, okay, play an ad. Because he just starts there and he's like,
Yeah.
I think it's salvageable, you know, and then he starts going into his rant, but I'll look through module 1 to see if that's connected to that particular video, because I pulled the video up. I have it stored on YouTube from the first time. I think it even might be on my channel from the first time that we did this case study, like back in 2019. All right, any other questions on that? You don't have to do a 4D. You don't. I mean, for your SWOT analysis, you want to look at your external opportunities and threats right now. Okay? If you feel comfortable putting the 4D overlay on there, great, but you don't have to. You can look at porters. You can look at a pest analysis. Okay, because there were some political ramifications based on what they could and could not do. But again, that's up to you. And when you present as a team, it's probably good that not everybody has a 4D, or not everybody uses a pest, or not everybody uses a porter. So you want a little bit of diversity for your presentation. So we good?
Yes.
Okay, so let's look at, not sure if I want to jump into more Vernon Road while the iron is still hot. But just kind of recapping again on why we're here, why we're talking about SWOT, why we're talking about 4D. So we're going to do our external analysis. Once we've completed that paper, right, on the external, then we've got to identify our strategic goals and our overall strategic direction. Now going to our final, what's our final goal? You guys remember? What do we need to do for this company?
30%.
30% what?
Increase.
In?
Sales.
And how long?
3 years.
So, so once we've identified our goals, we're going to put our strategies together, right? Now, one of the things that I'm going to talk a little bit more about Vernon Road, so I apologize because it really relates to what we're talking about, what we're writing about. So these guys identified their strategy, right? They thought they knew what they wanted to do, right? How did they implement them? I'll give you a visual.
Hastily.
Okay, but how, and what do they do?
They had a piece of paper. They just stuck on the wall.
Right. And who'd they make do it? Jeff, who did everybody hate? What do you need to do to implement change? What's one of the most important things that needs to be done?
Communicate effectively.
Communicate effectively, right?
Get the stakeholders done.
Involve stakeholders.
Stakeholders have to be involved, they have to be engaged, they have to be on board. Does everybody have to love what's going on? No. But when you go and stick a piece of paper up, and then he goes back to back to Richard, or maybe even the consultant. I'll have to watch it again, unfortunately, but, and he's like, oh yeah, it went great. Yeah, I really did. Maybe it was Richard. Yeah, I think it really went well. Like, okay. It didn't. People were like, do you remember what one person did when they handed him the piece of paper? Chucked it right in front of them. Just such a lack of respect, and these folks were clueless to that they thought they could just go in there and swing the heavy hammer and say, this is the way we're doing it. Now, the incentive for these employees was what? What was the incentive to do what they were saying to do?
There'll be no more redundancies.
According to Richard, that was it. We laid on for 12. This is the team I'm going to go to war with. This is who I want. And what else did he say in that meeting? Who was gone?
Oh, Jeff.
Jeff was gone. And who showed up a week later? Jeff. So all credibility gone. Nothing these folks would say was believable at that point, right? Okay, so I just want to kind of get back to what you were going to this week, all right? What we want to get out of this particular mod is we want to critique the role of sustainability and how it plays in our strategic planning. Okay, so we're going to talk about sustainability a little bit later. And we want to understand how organizations can benefit from incorporating the social, the environmental, and the fiscal aspects of putting a strategic plan together, like how they, and I really want you to watch Benwani's video, because there's another component that you really have to think about when you're doing these things that a lot of organizations don't. So and I'm going to put this out. Do you want to talk more about your discussion boards because they were unique? Or would you rather jump into a little bit more Vernon Road? Vernon Road?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't get to talk about Sal picking Hooters for
All over the
his
discussion.
discussion board post.
We can
right?
talk about just Sal.
Just
Um,
Sal. What was Sal's rationale?
The signature product for Hooters is,
Their wings and their customer service.
okay,
Which is great.
Delightfully tacky yet unrefined.
Thank you.
yes. So, all right, so, but I did like your discussion post. I mentioned before we recorded, before everybody got here, that we were very diverse. We had a really, right across the board, a lot of different organizations from, smaller to larger. We had Hooters, the Art of Homage, Aldi's, Help Aid, Warby Parker, Amazon, Dasani, Rosetta Stone, Tesla, and Apple. I mean, that's a different lot of folks. A little disappointed I didn't see Starbucks or Teavana in there after all the time we spent on them
That's
last.
been amazing if somebody did that.
But for your benefit, the discussion posts were really looking to have that that product that strategically separates them from the other organizations, like like the Big Mac to a Wendy's burger, whatever they call it. But I mean, you have that ability. One of the examples we used maybe a couple weeks ago, but was talking when New Coke came out, and New Coke was a disaster, and they were able to go right back to old Coke, not missing a beat, which a lot of organizations would have tanked if they didn't have that type of, they didn't have their sustainability model in place. But all right, so let's spend a little more time with our friends Richard and Henry. I don't like how this format's on. See, it goes right down into the little wood of our slideshow here, but okay, so our internal analysis. Right? What are some of the things, if you guys want to shout out, what are some of the things, the strengths, we'll start with strengths that we identified with Vernon Road.
So,
I think,
go Maria.
Go ahead, Maria.
I was just gonna say, I think the fact that they had such a highly tenured employee base could have been such an insane strength for them that they didn't even take advantage of.
Because Maria and I had the same brain. Mine was like, I think it's a stretch calling it this, but loyalty from employees, because people stayed through the transition when the chaplains bought it. And then I took it an extra step and said, even Jeff Mason has been with them for, what did it say, almost like 25, 30 years. And so there's like levels of loyalty that existed, even if it was like messed up.
So you're the Jeff Mason fan in the group?
No.
He doesn't have a likable face, right? He just
Oh,
looks like this
the
little
short
worm.
Yeah.
Like, I watched the video.
He came back. I'm pretty impressed that he came back.
Yeah, but I think they threw a ton of money at him, Rebecca. I think it was also, I think he got unlimited short sleeve dress shirts
Oh my
as
God.
part of his contract with
That was
the,
good. I like that. Nice
with
one.
rayon ties. And I
Sick
thought
burn, Eric.
it was tied to manufacturing plant, right? 'Cause you
Oh,
can catch
yeah,
it on
it's
things.
hot. Oh.
But Jeff did whatever Jeff wanted to do. What's another strength that they had, that they didn't utilize? Or maybe they did utilize,
There's only one other dye house that, or lace manufacturer that does what they do.
right?
Okay, so can I ask a question about that?
Yep,
I got thrown off with that. There's a few things I took off my SWOT because I thought to myself, like, isn't that external?
well, but it's a strength. You can use it as a strength.
Even, okay,
You can staff accordingly, right? You can leverage hires because you know there's only one other place in town that's, well, in the region that's. doing
okay,
that.
okay, okay, I see what you're saying in that.
But, and it's also going to be, it could be a threat.
All right, because that's one thing that, there's a few things I had that I was like, oh no, because I just like messed up internal and external a little bit in some stuff.
But that's all right, because you're gonna have overlap, there's gonna be bleeding, and just think of
Okay.
yourself in that role. Would you look at having only one other competitor in the region as a
And
strength?
then, yeah,
It's something that you can leverage.
yeah.
Now, after I laid off my 56 people, that becomes a weakness. So I don't have a very strong workforce right now. I've kept the people that didn't tell me to go to hell. I mean, that's what it came down to. What's another strength?
I have one, again, I don't want to be the only one talking here, but I have one that I'll probably get a lot of flack for, but I'm still going to stand behind it, is the fact that the two of them came in with a totally different management perspective than what the company was used to. So even though they did not communicate that effectively at all and their style was horrendous, they did have different ideas that potentially could have helped because the business was failing before they got there, so.
I had similar, Maria, I just said chaplains had potential for growth. Like there was potential for them to do really well because, I mean, it's funny, Maria, I would have never agreed with you when you said it that way, but it's right, like they came in and nobody knew them. So there is that opportunity that they could really be successful. And maybe that management style that they had could have worked well for some employees, right? Because obviously there was such turnover with obviously people owning the company before. Oh, I knew you were gonna say that too, because I wrote it in bold.
Right, but it was that perspective that they had.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you caught this, but in the very, very beginning, the narrator said, and Richard finally gets to be the boss.
Mhm.
So you had a rookie in there that was basically tenured in because of his last name, that was now calling the shots. So this experience that you had from a different perspective was never really realized because, as you also heard, the old man threw compliments around like manhole covers, right? Never told the kid he did a good job. Never. He's in the consultant asked him, has he ever told you you've done a good job in person? He's like, and the father, what was the father's response? It was cold. It was like ice.
He hasn't earned it yet.
Yeah, you haven't
Yeah.
done great.
Yeah, he hasn't
You
done a
haven't
good
done a
job
great
yet.
job.
So at that point of the, I would ask the consultant to step out of the room for a second, and I would just totally light up my father and say, hey, what's up? You know this is going on TV, right, Dad? But that's how tone deaf these folks were. What's another strength that they have that they didn't realize? Yes, Mom.
I have a question.
Sure.
A little confused on that. When you say different management personalities, is it right?
Different management, well, it was like they had a perspective from another industry that they could bring in.
How? Oh, okay.
So it'd be like
I was
if,
confused, like if it was like poor management, how that can be a strength.
but it was,
Talking
it
about.
had, there wasn't the strength of those two coming in and having that perspective. So it was basically bringing a fresh set of ideas into an organization, even though it wasn't technically textile or related, it was that mindset. So you had that, you could leverage that, you could make that, that could be, that's an area that could ultimately be an opportunity. It ultimately ended up being a weakness and honestly a threat because it put their company essentially out of business. They were not willing to learn. They're not willing to learn the industry.
So is that kind of go like with opportunity? Let's say when you're doing your SWOT analysis, can you use kind of the same thing like for strength and opportunity? Because like you're saying, it can be used as opportunity, you know, like.
So if you look like as the papers that we just wrote is our internal.
Mhm.
And then what we're going to do next week is our external. I apologize. You guys see this at home? Must look like,
Not really.
all right, I'm going to try to push it over a little bit.
We can hear you though. That's okay.
I'm very outspoken today. I apologize. Maybe it's because my camera is not on.
I'll get a little closer.
You're so adaptable.
You should see like my high-tech stand today. That's why you guys are getting like nauseous over there because I'm bouncing the computer around all day. So, John, what you can do is you can ultimately carry those over to external opportunities. Typically, opportunities are out of our control. But there's things in which if you have a new, fresh set of eyes coming into a failed institution, most people are optimistic, at least when you're strategizing, that there's an opportunity here to turn this around. So you could look at those two pieces of the human resource puzzle as a strength. So it's not wrong. Remember, masters of science and organizational leadership. It's a science. If you can prove your theory, then who am I to say no, right?
Eric, another strength that I didn't like put down or realize, because I guess I was thinking about like the business itself versus like the video, but they apparently had this like multi-million-dollar consultant coming in and giving them free advice.
Very good.
That's a strength.
Big time strength. Think of all
Or
your
an opportunity as well.
Right, and
Perhaps an opportunity they squandered.
full disclosure, Rebecca found him smug in the last meeting we had, right, Rebecca?
Yeah, he doesn't do it for me. I think there's too much blue eyes and sunny background, and he's really glorifying himself in the camera work. But either way, I felt like he could have been more specifically constructive versus just, critical. But
He's definitely got that Gordon Ramsay thing working where he's just so condescending, and he's telling them right to their face.
he's laughing and smiling about it.
And they always have, you're right, they always have the perfect camera angle where he's leaning back and you can see his pinky ring and he's just kind of saying, or the other beauty was when he calls in Richard to talk to him, right? So, and Richard's walking down the hall, like behind me, and the camera's right in front of me. So he makes believe like he's looking at some folder, and then he hears the door open, he goes, oh, yeah, come on in, Richard. It's like, all right, those are the things that kind of drive me nuts because it's so staged, but the conversations had merit and there were things that we think of it as, even when we go back to our little Maria's Fine Wines, right? If we had a consultant that came in that literally launched Coca-Cola in Europe, right? Why wouldn't we just sit there and take everything this person said as gospel and say, let's try it, because we're not making money right now. So they totally blew that, having that put in their lap, which could have, again, turned into a huge opportunity, and it ended up being a weakness because even if they turned it around a little bit, look at the reputation of these two. If I saw Richard or Henry show up at an interview, I'm like, oh yeah, you're the guys on TV that basically told a multi-million-dollar consultant that he didn't know what he was talking about, which is okay. I mean, that's okay to have that conversation, but they were just combative the whole time. Nothing he said they wanted to do, or they did it and then turned it around like a week later. So, all right, what else? Any other strengths? You guys talked about in your papers, anything? All right, let's jump over to our weaknesses. So what are some of the weaknesses? And you know what? I'm gonna run out of room here with these.
Can I, oh, sorry, Tal, can I just jump back to the strength thing?
Yes.
So you know how I think I feel like I made this up, but I did talk about it in my paper that leadership invested in making the company work. Like we talked about the financial investment being like a problem, but I did do a little research and there is stuff onto why you investing in your own company does make sense. And so in a lot of ways, it could be looked at as a strength because they did want to see it succeed because they had so much financial investment in the company.
So their own capital was their incentive to say,
let's make this work.
Yeah, because, Dad doesn't want to retire.
Like this, so like even for the workers' sake, like, these guys want to make it work. They're literally going to lose everything, but it's a strength in the company that these guys, because of their investment, needed it to go well. Or wanted it to go, like put the investment of time as well.
And one of the first things the father says is that we have everything invested in this.
Yeah.
So everything they took, and again, take it at face value. We don't know if that's from what he said is true or not. Where I'm sure if he's owned a couple of organizations, he threw some seed money into it, but then put a lot, he's got some stuff stashed, but
But like to your point of the science component of it, like I actually think that's BS and they should not have necessarily put that money in and they're just like kind of slimy, but there's a case for it for actually putting the money in the company.
right, because then you have a dog in the fight, right? So you're there, you know that if those decisions that you're making are affecting more than just the workforce, they're affecting you. And you kind of get a whiff of that when you lay off over half of your workforce, that you're looking to save a couple bucks. And you're not going to be as productive. You're not going to have the number of units going out that you had. You're not going to have the same product leaving. So at that time, you're just kind of like trying to control the bleeding. And the flag was essentially hoisted at that point that, it's just not going to work. But
I mean, it's also a weakness and a threat too, them putting their own money in, but that's another.
But see how these can bleed in?
Yeah.
They're not in concrete. So you identify them and then you defend your hypothesis one way or the other. Is by putting my money in a weakness? And you come up with examples as to, you do some research and you see how many, companies are successful when it's, with strictly, the analogy I keep thinking of in my head is like restaurants, right? Because these restaurants that go up, they put all their money. It's all family money. They get maybe a local investor, somebody. But then up in Mass, where I'm in the Boston area, there's some big time restaurants that closed down that were there forever. And the ones to lose the most were, the Richards and the Henrys of the world. It affected the folks that work there, but they put their life savings in there. I have you know, I told you guys maybe 5:20. I had to get ready on a Monday because all my wife's family owns restaurants. They're all Italians from Brescia, Italy, right? They all own pizza shops. Angelina's in Hartford is one of them, right? So every one of those kids, every one of these second gen kids are all going to school. They're cash pay. The parents put money, and I'm not like generalizing, every single one of the kids. So they'll work at the pizza shop, you know, 50, 60 hours a week until they're 17, 18, then they go off to school or they go to prep school or something, but that's all earned money. They don't have it, you know, they don't have any like type of 401k. It's just tough. So, and it seems that seems very similar to what these folks are doing by throwing all their money into it. But you just kind of wonder, they bought it so cheap, you know, they got it in bankruptcy, so they bought it for, you know, pennies on the dollar. So maybe they were playing a little bit fast and loose with it, but that's the fun part. We get to speculate and play these things out in our head and figure out how to best turn this company into, you know, a profitable, long-term, sustainable organization. So.
I cut Sal off, sorry. Was starting
I'm
the
sorry,
middle of
Sally,
this
any
thing.
question? Yeah,
No, I think he was gonna answer something, but
No.
no, you did not.
it was a weakness, Sal. I think it was a weakness.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. Was the lack of trust between employees,
Trust.
lack of between management and employees.
Okay, no trust whatsoever. Was there trust before Richard said, we're good, this is my team? I mean, it was kind of on the critical list. Then when he came back with this doozy a week later, you know, you lose. And now I think that was their 1 year mark when they had that speech that you're my team. What's another weakness that they had?
No motivation.
So how do you satisfy that? Yep. You guys had that mod yet? Yeah, you done? No motivation. You guys hear that at home? So there was zero motivation for these folks to come in. And again, one of my pet peeves of watching this was when Richard's being interviewed by somebody and two employees try to get into work and he totally ignores them. And like I said, 100 people, are you kidding me? You should be saying hi to every single one of them, right? Without them, you don't have an organization. So how do you engage these folks? What would you do, Marie? I mean, Joanna. How would you engage them?
Recognizing what their job, you know, like they're doing a good job. The company might be going through difficult moments, but at the same time, like if they don't work together as a team, then, you know, it's just like they don't work. They don't, you know, they're how do you say? I'm a blank, sorry.
Okay. Well, so remember in 520, we talked about Kaizen. You guys remember what that is?
The what?
Kaizen. I worked at Saturn Corp and it was a car company by GM. And when you go to Detroit, when they're building the cars, actually I was in Framingham right out of college at the Chevrolet Celebrity plant, which is where we were key pointed. There are just these long lines of one stop, one stop, one stop, one stop, one stop. And these cars just, you see them basically get built all along the lines. Pretty cool when you're looking at it. But every time that line shuts down, at the time, and this was 93, 94, when those lines shut down, it was $100,000 a minute. It was costing GM when that line shut down. So when somebody would slam the red security button that every station had, and the line shuts down, the leadership fled, and I use leadership in air quotes. They got right to the point of where that problem was. Was it because the well-being of the employee that might have shut the line down? You hope so, but it really was because that's $100 grand. If we have that whole minute there, that's 100 grand. And it was kind of like, I think we did the exercise on, was it United, when they're using the software to calculate fuel on the planes. Of if a plane gets stuck on the runway, it's like $1 million an hour, I think, that they lose because they can't, it was some crazy number, because they're losing traffic. They're not being able to, they're not making their destination on time. So they calculate, and I think that's the most weight of the plane is the fuel. So they calculate the least amount of fuel they need to go the farthest. So, and that has to do with the weight of the plane too. So you calculate passenger weight, luggage, and all that good stuff. So, but going back to Saturn real quick, Kaizen. So everybody, let's say we all work for Saturn and we're all part of the assembly line. Each one of us is cross-trained. We're cross-trained, so Marie can do my job, I can do Hannah's job, Hannah can do Sal's job, right around the room. So when Sal comes back from the casino feeling no pain and figures out I'm not coming to work on Monday, right? Do we lose productivity?
No.
Why?
I hop in.
We all hop in, right? So Hannah's gonna pick up some of Sal's slack. I'm gonna pick up some of Hannah's slack.
Thanks, Anna.
See, team.
Team,
Cohort.
Sal, team.
That's not your 20%.
Now, so if we really wanted to motivate these employees, and this is like some of the stuff that we'll look at for external opportunities and threats, we go to that type of mindset where we're actually rewarding and engaging our workforce, then you're not going to get, you're going to get more buy-in. You're going to be more amenable to change. We talked about, I just want to cover this real quick. We talked about here, when we implement strategies, remember, are we going to go in there on a Monday and say, okay, guys, we're going 3 shifts. We're running these machines 24 hours a day. What's going to happen if we did that at Vernon Road?
You'd be bankrupt.
Right. So what do we do instead? If we want to do that, ultimately, what do we do first?
One day would be better equipment.
Okay, but what would be the best way to implement that strategy?
Cross-train the employees.
Cross-training. What's the scale of the implementation? Do we want to do every machine at once?
Do like test. Yeah,
Right.
test.
Pilot.
Pilot.
You know, she remembered your clue the other time.
My terrible clue last week, where everybody's like, are you falling over? So if we put a pilot out there and we run one machine all night, and we put 2 people on that can manage that machine overnight, and we see how effective that is, because Richard gets a call at 2 in that quality control, whatever. I mean, if a customer calls him and tells him that this product is garbage, right? According to him. But so you run that one machine, you test it out, you see, you pull some data, you see how well that, your team functions working on a 3-shift system, how shipping is affected by working on a 3-shift system. These folks, somebody mentioned earlier, it was just knee-jerk. This is what we're going to do. This is when we're doing it. Like, okay, so the employees are like, we're just lemming. We just kind of follow along. We really don't have anything to do with this. When another opportunity comes up, we're out. But there really wasn't a lot of opportunities. So they weren't motivating their workforce. They were using their workforce. And hey, they're getting paid, right? They I believe are an at-will, or were an at-will employer. So it wasn't like, they had to go to work there, but they were making a decent living and doing something they weren't super happy at. And there was no incentive other than here's your check every other week or every week. So you could put these things in play, like with Saturn, where you cross-train your employees, where if somebody's out, somebody else can pick up the slack. You're not totally going full throttle 24/7. One of the things that one of my undergraduate professors taught me was that if you have somebody, and obviously this is way before telecommuting and working via Zoom, but if you can get 6 hours out of an employee during the day, like, you know, like a first shift employee, you can get 6 hours, that's impressive. There's so many distractions that happen. There's so many things that, you know, whether it's just, you know, you're working on something and then somebody else comes in and brings you another project. And it's just, there's a lot of distractions that can happen. And I think a lot of us found out too, working remotely, we can get more done. We don't have people jumping in our offices. Hey, can you help me out? Can you look at this? So, but anyway, there was zero motivation for these folks, and their strategy was broad scale versus kind of like piecemeal or just piloting that one particular area. Maybe you run a small incentivization program where, you know, where if you put the most pieces of product out, if you get the least amount of complaints, you know, you get your picture on the wall or whatever. It doesn't have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be something that you're hurting for cash. It's just that recognition that is important to the employees, just to know that they make a difference and that you care about them, which really wasn't, you know, again, why I like this case study, because it's just like almost watching a bad sitcom, you know? All right, what's another weakness?
No human resources.
I thought Maria for sure would jump in with that one.
HR doesn't always do what they're supposed to. That may be a strength and a weakness.
Maria's an HR professional, so.
I got that.
Okay, that's a great point though, Maria. They are a strength and a weakness because sometimes if you don't have a good HR team, that you're not getting good hires, you're not getting good training, your turnover and your churn is through the roof, right?
They have to be employee centric for sure, because some HR teams are just paper and policy driven, which is not necessarily what this company would have needed. But I see your point, Kate, certainly.
I would like to do a study to see HR, I wouldn't say policies, but let's say HR practices and how they change during open enrollment period for healthcare.
Yeah.
Because so little goes into looking at the employee versus making sure that all of our packages are, you know, executed. So it just seems that, exactly to your point, they are employee focused to get that task done, but there's other issues that kind of get swept to the side until that open enrollment period closes. And then maybe the week or two after, where they're chasing all the employees that haven't completed their open enrollment. So so you're right, that could be a weakness, it could be a threat, but
in this particular case, couldn't it just, like, how is it multiple things? Because we didn't even see anything. Like, you've got nothing else to base it off of in regards to like threat or opportunity. Like, opportunity would be maybe getting one. But do you know what I mean?
yeah, I think from our perspective, if we look at it as just like bare bones human resources, there wasn't any.
Yeah.
So, and they made offers to people on their own. So
Yeah.
it wasn't that they acted as the chief cook
Yeah,
and
like the
bottle
Jeff
washer.
Mason thing never, it like couldn't have happened
Right,
the way it did if there was any form of,
any.
yeah.
Well, it probably could have, but it shouldn't have. I've seen employees, kind of boomerang employees, come back for situations, but it's not good optics.
But I will tell you, we are one of the most nepotistic organizations I've ever been around, right? I mean, brothers and cousins and son-in-laws, and that's not a bad thing. From our experience, that has not been a bad thing. But each candidate went through the channels. Now, I'm sure, you know, maybe not as rigorous as other candidates might have to, but I's dotted, T's crossed, everything's above board. But we still end up with a lot of family in the university. So, I mean, it started out with, we had when I joined it, we had 22 employees. So now we're up over 500, I believe, aren't we? So, okay, so HR, we can make the argument one or the other, but from Kate's point of view, it was non-existent with this organization, right? So, what else we got for threats? I mean, I'm sorry, for weaknesses.
Is it no employee training program? Because at one point he mentions that like the quality isn't good because he's, well, obviously they're pushing them very hard, but they're not up to speed on like how to do the volume. as well.
Yes, and so, God, it's horrible. And I think I really like the quote of, we have 4 engineers sitting around doing nothing. We're paying them. It's like, oh, that just hurt them so much to say that, but they weren't trained. There was no cross training. There was no motivation. If you want to, let's get you trained on this equipment over here. Let's get you trained on that. There was, you're hamstrung because you do have a dedicated workforce, but they're just, you know, if it was like having a sports team where you just had a bunch of great players at one position. And so who's going to kick, who's going to throw the ball, who's going to run, you know, it's like, you know, one person. They didn't really want to cross train anybody. And I really think that was, you know, again, my perspective, cost cutting for them. They didn't want to put the money into it. Why spend somebody to be around when you're not getting anything out of them until they're trained? And at that point, then there's some duplicity, or they call it redundancies, and you're going to start to lay off. Because I would be suspect if I was an employee and they wanted to cross train me, that the person's machine they were training me on was getting the boot. That would be my gut, you know? All right, what else do we have for weakness?
I wrote the personal money and the weakness. I don't know. It sounds like it could be the strength as well now.
Well, remember, can be both.
Yeah. Well, he had to give away the car.
I'm convinced that that car
Stop.
just went around the block
Stop
and
it.
came back in the
No
driveway. when the
way.
camera
He
too late.
sold the car.
Yeah, Ron, he had a Jag convertible. And,
What?
Yeah, and he
You had to sell it, huh?
yeah, he sold it.
Hmm.
Well, and really too, if you watch the video real closely, it's like, yeah, I think we can find a buyer for it. And they show him driving it, like pulling it out. So we don't know if they ever really did sell it, but,
Classic.
so yeah, the personal money, it's, you know, it's the double-edged sword where it motivates you to succeed. But at the end of the day, because you're that hamstrung for capital, that you're throwing all your own money into the organization, you know, you're really, it's feast or famine, right? I think they just wanted to get enough out of the organization to get their initial investment back and then just fold their tent because they knew they picked the wrong arena.
Didn't they buy it bankrupt?
They bought it in bankruptcy, correct?
I definitely, I mean, I know I wrote it in my paper the other way, but I lean towards it being a weakness because you put money in a company that already wasn't doing well.
Mhm. Right, but you had success in other manufacturing positions or careers. So you think you can go in like our strength up here, right? We had, we were coming in from a different perspective.
Yeah.
That was gonna take it to the next step. I'm sure they didn't come in necessarily like, you know, trying just they're just trying to like, you know, whatever, flip it or whatever. I'm sure they went in thinking, we're gonna make this a success. And I really think it was the old man's kind of swan song. Hey, Henry's gonna go out on top. He's gonna hand the keys over to the kid. The kid's gonna run the company. And it never came to fruition. So, but it was definitely something that they had the opportunity, but never really kind of rolled up their sleeves. And having the consultant in there, and again, this is kind of just hypothetical, but what if the camera's not there and the consultant's having these conversations? Do you think that made a difference?
I think so.
I think though, I mean, I know and Rebecca talked about this, but I know that Richard and Henry come up, albeit jerks, but they come off more authentic than Jerry, the consultant, did. Right? He's talking from like, this is me, I'm the expert, this is what you need to do. And they tell him like, well, look, all you've come in is told us to do is fire 2 people. So, I mean, they're authentic. I just think they're in over their heads. Yeah.
I do have to agree with that statement about the cameras being on, because I watch a show, Counting Cars.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy, the owner I see on TV is not the one I read, the person that he seems to be on television. Like, he thinks he knows what he's doing, but when I read an article about him, doesn't know anything about it, like a lick about automobiles. They have to train a program, say, this is what it does, blah, 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 blah. So I'm kind of thinking that I'm with you on that statement. I don't think that what they're on.
Don't forget, the British people don't lie. This is the British, this is the BBC that we're getting it from here.
Wow.
No, but Sal, this guy knows his stuff. No doubt about it. This guy launched Coke in Europe. I mean, that's not like,
Okay,
that's not an
granted,
easy
but
lift.
I still don't think what personality wise, that.
They came off kind of Hollywoody, you know, like I'm the expert. This is what they're gonna do. I can't believe they're not doing it. Well, buddy, if you're getting paid by somebody to be there, then have a pointed conversation with the guy and say, look, this is what you need to do. You do realize that you're gonna lose everybody. And if it was that desperate, get out of that workforce, start talking to those people. Just don't talk. I know it was a leadership exercise, but you talk to the people, the most valuable asset you have out there, the human resource, and you let them know this is what's going on. Because if you recall, Jeff went out there and said, hey guys, if you don't turn it around in 6 to 8 weeks, we're all out of a job. Like, what kind of motivation is that, right? So I promise you by the end of the mod, I will take a header over stepping on one of these like weird angled legs of this chart. Okay, so let's get a couple more weaknesses.
They were bad at communicating change or just communication in general. Like there was no regular like vessel for, there was no like weekly meetings or monthly updates or daily huddles. Like there was just no communication on a regular basis planned. It was just anytime we've got a bomb to drop, we're going to call you together, we're going to announce it. And so, yeah, like there's just nothing really already in place. But then also if they had changes, they didn't have any kind of plan to roll it out other than to gather everybody together and read them like a memo.
And if you recall in the video, when Richard was making the announcement on the 1 year mark, he started barking at people, get closer. I don't want to yell, get closer. You know, he didn't even have everybody's attention. So they're right, they weren't conditioned to have a huddle or let's get a morning team meeting. Nothing.
Let's get you a cup of coffee before we give you some bad news.
Right. At least, you know, give them, let them know, like bring in some donuts, just something that we care about you, but unfortunately the market, you know, we lost that piece of the market we thought we had, or whatever the case may be. They just didn't really care about their people. That's what it comes down to. And their communication showed it. Their lack of communication showed it. So let's do one more. What's another glaring weakness? I have to go to my sub notes.
We didn't say poor leadership.
That's
Not
number
all
one.
encompassing, but
Yeah, just poor management.
Okay, we're in a leadership cohort, right? Were they managing or leading?
I mean, really neither, but
question. Right.
Not in barking orders.
All right, I'll give you some of
Put it
my.
to as more of like a top-down decision-making process. So obviously that I think ties into poor management, but there was no conversations, no discussions, no getting ideas or input from the employees. It was very top-down.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't even know if it was almost like a, it was the dictatorship, so it really wasn't a decision based on the overall general health of the organization. At one point, it was, we can't be mean to Jeff. So regardless of how that affected the rest of the workforce and their credibility and the opinion of the employees towards leadership, it was more important to make sure Jeff, who worked previously, I think they said for 15 or 20 years with the other company, was more important than what the actual people that were pulling the levers were doing.
I thought they ran the company like a prison, personally.
You guys hear that at home? South said he thought they ran it like a prison. Elaborate.
I mean, just their demeanor.
Yeah.
The way that- I mean, the way they were talking, the way they wanted, like, deadlines met. And going back to the motivation, I think it was more like, it kind of reminded me of like Shawshank, the way it was.
One of mine, a weakness, they were selling machinery to make money. I mean, that's your bread and butter, so. Then, of course, the weakness is when you're cutting your workforce down, laying off 12 and then laying off 46. You lose your credibility there. When Jeff was in that closed door meeting and quote unquote laid off, it was not, as a leader, we talked about this maybe in 520 as well, right? So we could all come up, you guys are going to present your final, right? So you guys could say, let's say Stephen Campbell comes up with this real radical idea of how maybe conceptually how he can save this organization, that get that 30% in sales increase. And his teammates are going to say, you're whacked, it's not going to work. I don't want to do it. I don't want to present. So then Stephen's going to say, all right, well then let's talk it through. How are we going to do it? So you guys all come to an agreement and you present. And what's that term that we talked about when everybody's together and we're presenting and we all agree? What do we have? Consensus. It's a unified
Front.
Unified front, right? So Stephen, when that door closes, we could fight like cat and dog, but when that door opens and we're out talking to our workforce, we have what they believe as a unified front. They see a unified front. They believe we're all in agreement. But in actuality, that doesn't have to be the case. We can respectfully disagree with folks. It doesn't mean that we're just gonna, not my ball, it's my football, I'm leaving the game. You guys can do whatever you want because I'm not getting the ball enough. Stuff like that, they're adults. But when they laid off Jeff, and when he suspended him, he came right out to Jerry. He's like, I just want you to know, I don't agree with that. It's like, well, who cares? Is it in the best interest of the organization to do that? Or was it because now you had your feelings hurt because you had hired somebody back that you should have never had in the first place? So that unified front, I'll grab my watch because I don't want to keep you guys forever. It's very important, and it didn't exist. It was us against them. It was Richard and Henry and Jeff versus Jerry versus the employees. Okay. So you guys got the feeling down for our internals. Did you guys get most of the stuff in your paper, right? Your first writing assignment. Now, let's spend a little bit of time on opportunities, some of the things that you're going to work on, some of the ideas that you think you can bring from here. Now, remember, this is not the 4D. So again, this is our desired, if it was a 4D. So we want to have everything really end up here, right? But what are some of the areas in which we can, we see opportunities from an external perspective? We already have a couple up here, remember?
They are the only ones who do what they, well, they're the one of two who do what they do. So that's an opportunity, but I think then there's also an opportunity to then like differentiate themselves even more.
How so?
I don't want to give you all my secret sauce for my paper presentation, but
Okay, all
I don't
right.
know. They find something special that the other group doesn't do.
The Nottingham Lace. So I thought that they could reinvigorate their brand. So they've been around for 120 years, and like, I'm sure the consumers are like, who does this product, right? It's an opportunity for them to re-energize and tell that in today's new consumers or new businesses what they do, and, you know, they have this history and this knowledge for 120 years.
Yep, definite opportunity. Because you have these folks here that have the capability to do that. You just really haven't tested them yet.
I don't know how to put it, compact, but in the motivation of the employees to produce a better product, not because of, in spite of management, if you know where I'm going with that.
Pride.
Yeah, right.
Right, so you've got a really strong work base that hasn't been motivated and are probably sick of hearing Richard say, why am I getting quality calls at 2 a.m? Right, so you think that they want to have the opportunity to be prideful of their work, of what they put out. Like for me personally, working at a university, my goal is to put out good students. That's my goal. I don't care about anything else but the ambassadors of the folks that graduate from this university that are out in the workforce. That to me is the most important thing. That's an opportunity for me every morning. I can fix that. I can work towards that. And I take pride in that. That's a good one, Sal. What else? What are
This
other?
might be another thing that I should have read in that final project overview. But were they mostly making their products just to send to different people within the community and within England? Because they probably could have expanded, whether it was online sales. I mean, it was early 2000s, so that was definitely an option, or just going into different cities. I don't know exactly where their reach was.
Yeah, it was primarily England. But to your point, they're hitting their market right now at kind of at the .com era, as that's kind of dawning, really, which was like what, early 90s maybe, when companies started doing a lot of e-commerce. So definitely an opportunity at that point to expand, to go globally versus locally. So these are all things when you're working on your final, you're going to look at. These opportunities will blow you away when you start looking at other organizations as to what they're doing. Well, what else do we have for opportunity here?
So I thought they could apply some research and development dollars for innovations, or there are new dyeing techniques that they're not using. Is there, I don't know, some new textile they can help launch?
So this is an excellent point, which also goes into our sustainability model, which we're going to talk about shortly, right? What do we say most dyeing companies, where were they located? Most of
The
them,
water.
water and river. Why was that? It wasn't for the hydropower.
Mental.
Waste.
They're dumping the
Waste. And now the EPA cracks down. Again, this is England, but if you have a gallon of antifreeze and a jug in your garage now, you'll be getting a knock on the door from the Department of the Environment or DEP or whatever. But so to these chemicals they're using, they certainly have to look at ways in which they can be more sustainable, that they're better for the environment. You remember the process we talked about last week? Sublimation. Some organizations are going to that versus dyeing and bleaching, where the pattern is woven right into the material. That's all part of R&D. That's all part of utilizing your workforce and essentially maybe send them off to a 72-hour training seminar to modify the machinery to come up with these things. So it's not like we're reinventing the wheel. So research and development is a huge piece of the opportunity that they really weren't interested in. Their mindset was fire, ready, aim. They just went right in there and said, we're gonna do it this way. Okay, Jeff, you ran a company for us before, you take it over. And they didn't really want to hear what the pros had to say. They didn't want to give a lot of credit to their employee base. All right, one more external opportunity.
Money,
Investors. What's the kickback with investors? What do we have to worry about? Right. What's the acronym? Starts with a W.
ROI,
Say it again.
ROI, return on investment.
Okay, that's one. But
Darn
what's the one we talked about for ourselves? W, I, F, M. You guys don't remember that?
No,
It's
never heard of it.
We talked about it in 522.
I don't know.
What's in it for me? What's in it for me, right? That was the mindset going in.
I keep saying kiss in my head, like kiss, because they're not like, I'm not gonna say with them in like a meeting.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, you could.
I know, but
You wouldn't go up there and say, hey, whip them. But no, you would say, I'm suspecting that there's a bit of whip them in this model here, because they seem kind of like focused inward on how to do things that are preventing us from maybe bringing in good investors, researching in products, expanding our brand. There are other arenas. We want to get in other arenas. That's our goal. Investors, if we bring in investors, there's always some type of return that, they give us, say, they'll give us 10%. Well, talk about Shark Tank, right? So it's not gonna be an even exchange. So they're taking a risk on us, and with that risk, they're gonna get a bit more, they're gonna negotiate some type of return. So, and you also want to look at, when you're bringing investors, where you're not losing control of what your mission is, where an investor might, progressively own more and more of the organization, the more and more profitable it becomes. So you just want to make sure that if you're bringing investors in, that you're very clear on what the returns are. All right, last one we're going to do, and we're going to talk about sustainability, are threats. Okay. And what are a few of the threats that we're talking about with these guys? Sal?
You can drop down investors to that. If you're giving a percent, if they're gonna want a percent of the company, and let's say you had a great year, they want their cut.
So if our goal is to get that 30% net sales increase, that's going to be something we have to monitor. If we do have investors that, we might think we cleared that 30, and then we realize, oh, that's right, I forgot, we have to pay XYZ organization, 12%, where it could be an escalator, where the year before it was 10, and the year before that it was 8. So, so we do have to keep an eye out on that. That's a possible threat. What else we got?
That other company.
The other company. So what's the other company probably already acquired? Yeah, these skilled employees that were never really utilized. And, we don't have a very broad knowledge of that workforce other than what we saw on camera. So, and it's not like they all walked out of a Mensa meeting and came over and decided to work at, Vernon Road Bleaching and Dyeing, but these were loyal employees that had many years with this organization. And I would probably guess pretty spiteful to say, yeah. And I would, again, my football analogy, the knock they always say about Bill Belichick is when a team in the AFC East releases a guy, he signs them. He doesn't want them for their skill. What does he want them for? Their playbook. You know, when they line up like this, what are they doing? When they line up like that? So I want their play. I want Vernon Rhodes' playbook. I want to know what they're doing. I want to know what their plans are. And, you know, I gotta tell you, it's not probably a very big playbook. So I'm not stealing an employee. I'm giving an employee an opportunity from this other company. Because I know it's probably, from an overhead perspective, easier to train somebody that's already experienced, that is possible, has leadership potential. So I'm not looking to pirate these employees and brainwash them and, you know, totally get them onto our company's platform. This is what we want. We just want good employees, and and Vernon Rhodes losing these folks because they really don't know how to manage the situation. So it's a good gain for the other company, as well as some of your proposals are going to be to expand globally. So it gives opportunities for these folks to kind of go outside of, you know, their backyard. What's another threat?
More up-to-date items.
Say that again, Sal?
More up-to-date items
So
or techniques or.
So the other company, you think will have better?
Not staying relevant,
Staying relative, Rebecca?
or yeah, or not staying relevant. Like, that's what I feel like Sal is saying.
Yeah. There you go. That's what I needed.
One, like I had written, like sort of looking at it internal, but it can be external, like the antiquated production systems. Like outside, the external factors, people are ahead of them as far as like, we were talking about whether it's machinery or process or whatever that looks like,
So,
that not keeping up component.
well, and also as a threat, so I have 100 employees on the floor. I'm selling equipment to, you know, keep my profit lines very thin where they are. But I also have equipment that I could go in tomorrow and, or if I want to expand and run that third shift with that pilot, I'm putting more wear and tear in that machine. So if I don't put money into it, it's out. So that's
Answer?
no, antiquated. That's my kind of lean over part scribble on the right hand side. Antiquated equipment.
This isn't another spot that like throws me a little bit, because like, I just explained it, like I can now see it from the external perspective, but like when I had written it here, I looked at it from that internal, because it does impact what's happening inside as well.
Yeah, well, that,
Okay.
remember, you're gonna see
I
a
know,
lot of
I
these
just like
things
it to be
bleed in.
black and white, and it's not.
No, it's never gonna be black and white, because even though this is a quote unquote textbook case study of how it's reverse engineering, how not to do something. We can build a company based on doing the opposite of what this company's done. So you're not gonna have that black and white, but you see areas of opportunity which are gonna bleed over, which, again, when we throw our 4D in there, if we do, you're gonna see that they can easily go from a desired outcome to a doomed outcome if they don't work away from, if they don't try to work away from their weaknesses and identify them. They're always going to be in this quadrant right here. All right, let's do one more, and then I want to talk about, we'll go into sustainability.
China.
China. Was
Yeah,
that-
other countries that will produce things more cheaply and who probably have more production.
China.
Okay, you open the door for a current event conversation, okay?
And we are 60 minutes in the supply chain.
Well,
That's
no,
all. I was like,
no, I heard that was pretty
it
good.
was amazing to understand it all.
I'm gonna,
Because I'm 90 years
as you
old,
will know,
60.
unfortunately, I'm gonna make a basketball reference right now,
Yes.
okay? Anybody know who Enes Kanter is? He's a center for the Celtics, okay? You guys know who the Celtics are, right? So, he has, and he's of Muslim faith, has received death threats when the company, when the organization was gonna play overseas. but he's also very outspoken on the Uyghur slaves that are building most of Nike's footwear that I have Adidas on today, but that most of us wear, okay? And most every person of prominence in the NBA wears Nikes. So he's come right out and said, he's publicly come out and asked the commissioner of the NBA, the president of Nike, Michael Jordan, who has, Air Jordans, and LeBron James, I'll fly you over. I'm going to show you what happens in these camps. And crickets, nothing, right? So he is he is very, very, very outspoken about this, to the point of where he might lose his livelihood because he's being right now, and he's a good player, but he runs the risk of being waived by the Celtics because the league isn't happy with what he's saying. So now, right, this is a leadership course, so I applaud a guy like that for going right, taking it like putting everything on the line. Unlike our buddies here, Richard and Henry, he's literally putting his career on the line to speak out for things. At the end of the day, he probably drives, a $200,000 car, lives in a $2 million house. But at the end of the day, this guy is advocating for people who are making 14 cents an hour. And watching his teammates that are wearing Nikes that are making, $15, $20 million a year, that are a couple years out of college. So it's very frustrating to him, but it's a great follow if you just Google him and see what's happening with this process, because the NBA said, shut up. And he's like, no, I'm not going to shut up. You guys need to look at this. So, and Nike and the NBA are wicked tight. I mean, that's like the biggest contract that they have. And it's gotten to the point where it's costing the NBA money because China won't broadcast any NBA games because of his comments now. And as you guys know, there's a few people in China. And there's a few sneakers out there, and there's a lot of NBA gear. It's a hugely popular game in China. And they usually give like Team USA a run for their money in the tournaments in the Olympics. So anyway, that's a good piece if you guys want to get that perspective of leadership from an athlete who's, taking matters into his own hands because he's not getting support that he should be getting from the league, in my opinion. But it's what you see a lot of is virtue signaling by these athletes or actors, whatever. And this is a guy that puts his money where his mouth is and could lose everything. So that's my public service announcement. Look into Ennis Gantner for the Celtics and just see how difficult it's been for him in just trying to make somebody else's life better. So it's we want any more questions on the SWOT? You guys good to go into your external paper, you think? Anybody, home audience, you guys good with the SWOT in your external paper for next week?
Yep.
Hope so.
I know so, Rebecca. You got your secret weapon that you're not telling us about, so I'm sure.
That's true. We'll see if it works.
All right. So let's talk about sustainability. Sustainability, kind of in a nutshell, is when you meet the financial, ethical, moral, and developmental needs presently, but you're thinking about what's going to happen down the road. We put our strategic plan together. Are we doing that plan for tomorrow? Yes, no?
No.
That was not a convincing no, Sal. That was like, tomorrow's in the equation, but when we put our plan together, we're
3 to 5 years.
right, 5 years, 4 years, some 3 years. So we have to consider a lot of the things, and that's what we're going to bring in our pest analysis. We're going to look at you know, the long-term political ramifications, things that could come into play, like when we talk about Vernon Road, like, again, the EPA, the chemical component of it, OSHA, the labor laws, just a lot of things. So we have to look like 5 years out when we're putting these plans together, but we want to implement them again in pilots and stages. We're not going to just do these wholesale changes overnight, because typically those don't work very well. Congo Gumi, founded in 578, was a standalone up until 2006. Have you ever heard of them before? They built, there were 3 carpenters from Korea that got recruited by an emperor in Japan to build a Buddhist temple. And these 3 did such a nice job on it that they ended up basically giving them a company. And that company stayed together. Well, I mean, technically it's still together. It became a subsidiary in 2007, but it was the first organization in Asia to basically hand it down to a daughter. And I kind of commented pre-woke here, but it was not, they didn't do it as a way in which to say, look at the optics. They did it as a way in which to say, this is the best person fit for the job. I find that ironic because what happened with Vernon Road? What kind of handoff was that?
Father, son.
Father, son, right? Well, Congo Gumi was a father, son, father, son, father, son, father, daughter, for centuries. In 1443 years, something like that. So, but they had that sustainability model, and they just did things. It was very organic how they came together, but they worked on things where they didn't really stretch their brain. They built temples, and they know that there'd be a lot of work for them because of the large Buddhist population. So there was always going to be work, be it in Asia. They, again, 578. It wasn't like hop on, we're going to fly out and check this site out now. Everything was kind of close by, and then they would relocate and they build, and they relocate and they would build. So they essentially kind of carried their shingle around with them, but they were a very well-run organization from the onset. And when they handed it off, the company that bought them is this large construction firm in Japan, but they just wanted the name. I mean, they wanted to be able to say that this was a part of their organization, because they were known. If you needed a Buddhist temple built, this was the place. And they did other work, but this was their thing. That was their forte. So from a sustainability perspective, one of the key things you want to take away from that is you kind of stick with what you know, like what you open the door for in the first place. So get really good at the dyeing and the bleaching aspect of it, and then turn that into opportunities. Our triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. That's when we talk about Manwani. And Manwani's started out, I want to say it was like 1976. And again, it's a 7-minute video, but very well worth the watch. Started out in 76, and he was selling, he worked for Unilever. You guys know what Unilever is?
Who's behind that?
What's that?
Who's behind that?
Right, what do they make?
So,
Soap, right? So he said his first job, he gets out there. All right, we can continue, case back. And then, sorry, you want me to wait? I'm just kidding. So he went, he shows up on his job, and he's like, manager goes, what are you doing? You know, what's your goal? What are you gonna do? He goes, I'm here to sell soap. And the manager said, no, you're not. You're here to change lives. So, you know, and think about it, like when we first get that job, we're all fired up, we go out there and like, yeah, I'm gonna be your best soap salesman around. And the person sat on the side and said, no, you don't understand. You're changing lives. There are 5 million kids that don't make it to 5 years old in some of these third world countries. Because why? What gets to them?
Usually water quality,
Part of it, what don't they have?
vaccines.
They don't have a means in which to wash their hands. They don't have, the water's dirty, they don't have soap. They get these little infections that you or I probably are walking around with right now. And their immune system can't fight it off and they die before their 5th birthday. So Unilever identified that as a way in which, you know, we're gonna sell soap. People need soap, but we're gonna change our model to go after the folks that need it the most. And we're gonna find ways in which we can have that subsidized. We can get it to them as a way to spread the brand, but also as a way in which we're going to make their quality of life a lot better. So he started, I think when he retired from Unilever, he was chief operating officer globally. That was like probably 2005-ish. But his whole mindset shifted from profit, which, you know, our friends over at Burner Road was all about bottom line, right? To that fourth, the piece of the sustainability model, which a lot of organizations don't think about, and that's like the human aspect of it, and what's not necessarily what's in it for me, like not the with them, but what's in it for them, or what's in it for you. So part of his mindset and the mindset of like how we think globally now is reducing and eliminating waste, right? We were right here. You guys are standing or sitting on what was a brown scale, okay? Had we done nothing to this right now, the smell would be so bad, you couldn't even like sit in a closed room with, you know, with the windows open, it would be like, you would think that a sewage tank dumped outside. It was just brutal, right? So part of our moving to this strip of land back in 2008 was we had to remediate it. So granted, it's a great looking school. We were on a corner over in Burnside in Scotland and East Hartford for a long time. But, you know, with power comes great responsibility. So we put a nice campus up, but we also cleaned up the area. We cleaned it up from just south of the, is it Two Rivers, all the way down to the Route 3 bridge, where we remediated all the soil just north of this building. We cleaned out all of the Wilgoose over here, the former Pratt Whitney jet engine testing site. So those aren't money makers, but from a sustainability and a long-term perspective, it's the best thing we could do for the community and the organization, right? So what's the benefit that we have by doing that? That's one single benefit.
PR.
PR.
Looks good. People can't come after you for doing the wrong thing.
Well, they could, you know, the mayor still kind of would have questions about us. Former mayor, right? Former mayor now. But no, you're right. The people, you know, the adage I think I shared with you guys before was that, you know, if I'm walking down Main Street and I see a 5-story building on fire and I run in and there's 100 people in the building, and I pull 99 out, just about everybody's going to say, wow, that's awesome. Good for you. Congratulations. I hope, you know, and there's going to be people that are going to say, well, you know, you let that one person die, you know? So, so you're always going to get those naysayers. So you do it because you're doing the right thing, but it certainly doesn't hurt, because when the press is putting out articles about remediating, you know, 67 acres of oil farm, it really looks good that the university is doing the right thing, and we do the right thing. I mean, we'll take the high ground. So using renewable resources, what's an example, what could we do to get renewable resources, and why would that benefit us? Benefit all of us. And we've done it recently too. What's an example of a renewable resource?
So,
So,
solar power,
solar.
solar.
Have you seen
I
panels?
was gonna say that too, Hannah, so I hope you're right.
Sure you are.
Wind.
Sure you are. No, we put above the original piece of construction on our main building, we filled that whole roof with solar panels. We have waterless urinals. So we save, each urinal saves 600 gallons of water a month. So think about that. That's 7,200 in a, right? 7,200, 600 gallons a month. So that's 7,200 gallons a year, right? We've been here for 12 years, right? 2008, 12, 13 years. So that's each urinal. So I mean, think of the impact that makes, where there's some, you know, fresh water is not exactly the easiest thing to get to in the world, but investing back in the community, why is that a good thing? What do we call those folks?
Philanthropist?
No. What do we call our community neighbors? Stakeholders. They're stakeholders. You think the folks on Anson Street are happy that we renovated a ton of the buildings, the duplexes over there? Do you think they like the building on the corner of Ensign and Main? And for Rebecca and Maria, Maria, you've been here, but it was a vacant lot. It was a dirt lot right across from Pratt's old headquarters. And now we've got like this really nice three-story, yeah. It's like 3 or 4 stories. It's just really nice. Got a coffee shop and a credit union in there.
Right.
And there's like offices above it. So, well, it's certainly good for us, but we're also giving that, back to the community because we're revitalizing that strip of downtown. We've done it with a couple other properties like 417 and 351, other buildings on Main Street that we've completely retroed.
I think it can also, Eric, just as an additional supplement to that, I think it can also support, companies can support the communities by maybe investing in like going to high schools or partnering with colleges to work on, you know, hiring or job fairs or, you know, interviewing skills or things like that, which in turn may help them down the road to be able to hire. So it's sort of, it can be a benefit in that sense as well to really connect with the community so that they see you as a resource down the road.
Absolutely. And it's a great point, Maria, because we've been known, this particular area was known as a manufacturing hub for decades, like post World War II, this was a manufacturing hub. The shift is coming to College Town. I mean, and you can see it. If you drive down Main Street in East Hartford, you're going to see far more Goodwin signs than you are Pratt Whitney signs or Raytheon now signs. And that's not a knock on them. It's just that our sustainability model and our growth model has utilized opportunities, and I don't like hide it at all. During the pandemic, our model allowed us to sustain the worst pandemic hopefully we'll ever see in our lifetime, right? Fiscally, we managed our money well. We had very few furloughs, and those furloughs, for the most part, almost like 90% were brought back. And we didn't have a lot to begin with, but we managed our money well. And we're a private, not-for-profit university. We were able to mobilize. You guys, Maria and Rebecca, you wouldn't be here right now because the classes would only be online. So you're not going to fly in from Iowa or drive down from Maine to come to class. So we were able to mobilize and come up with a model which could basically support our distant learners or folks that maybe just got out of work, couldn't get to class here, or whatever the case may be. But either we create that amenity for our students to give you the opportunity to learn And kind of what you're saying, Maria, we're paying back where you're gonna now go out, like, we're gonna offer this technology to our high schools, to our middle school, to our elementary school. We call it GUMS, the Goodman University Magnet School System. We have a food pantry. That's one of the areas that I oversee. That, I mean, well, Hannah, you were there last week, right? Not for pickup. Hannah was there covering an event. We had the Dairy Farmers of America give us a check for $2,000. They're, one of the farms is going to donate 1,100 gallons of milk for the next year for us to serve our community. And our community isn't just the students. Our community is the students, their parents, anybody in their household. So and if that student comes in and says, I have a household of 9, or the parent comes in, then we serve a household of 9. So our sustainability model, we budget X amount of dollars every year for that pantry and work like heck to get subsidy. But our model is to get back to the community and make the community better. So if the community is better, they support the institution. So, we get into, like we talked about a little bit with Kettner and the Celtics about virtue signaling and pounding our chest. We don't have a president that's up there saying, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and I'm doing that. You'll hear about it occasionally in the paper, and you'll see some notes because Hannah likes to broadcast everything the advancement team does. So it's always on social media and stuff, but it's done in a way in which to bring awareness. And one of the things that Hannah does great, better than anybody I've ever seen, is the number of employees in our organization that give back, that whether it's to the Scholarship Foundation or to the food pantry, which is the newest one. Just to help out our fellow students is incredible. I mean, there's no like, hey, if you don't do it, we'll remember that in the next performance review. It's nothing like that. It's just the culture that's created by becoming an organization that's known in the community for giving back. So our sustainability model relies heavily on culture. We could have the smartest architect in the world come in here, but if their culture is horrible, and they're talking about the building they want to put up and we love it, that architect's not going to be around to see that building come to fruition. So we really believe heavily into that sustaining based on more of, I want to say, a hand out versus a hand up. We want to be there both educationally, fiscally, ways in which that we can support, that we have the means, because we've essentially built for that particular, we know the market we serve, we know the area that we're in. So we've become very strong supporters of all the opportunity, areas of opportunity in our community. So we have these MOUs. You guys know what MOU is? Memorandum of Understanding. We have boatloads of these things with different community-based organizations, because those folks were hit the hardest during the pandemic. So that's on the order of our president and our board of trustees to do these things, but it's not done, again, for virtue signaling, it's done for the greater good. And when you're putting your strategic plan together, well, it might not always look, again, Chris's vacation quote, right? What looks good on the bottom line doesn't always look good in person. Well, it might not really look good on your bottom line for your first couple of years, but you'll see how, if it comes to fruition, some of the things that you're turning into desired outcomes that that you're getting more and more control of are really the things that are going to make the difference with your organization. So it's like 8:10. Just give me that time.
I jump all these.
Good. Okay. I didn't want you to miss it.
No, thank you, though. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any questions on this model? Are you guys following? I need to go to my sub notes. Oh, I wanted to talk about what Manwani, another one again. You guys gotta watch it. So he has a system which he calls, there's like some type of sand or dirt. I don't know if it's sugar from a coffee or what on this desk. So his model is for success was growth by consistency, being competitive, and being profitable. Okay. Now, soon after he'd been working with Unilever, he realized that there needed to be a fourth component to that of being responsible, both socially responsible, being economically responsible, like I just talked about with our organization during the pandemic. So if you sit back and be an innocent bystander, and this isn't a PSA, so pandemic, we know a lot of people lost their jobs, right? We know that most universities were really hurting. So what do? We jacked up our inventory in the food pantry. We publicized the heck out of it. Come and visit, come and visit, come and visit. And we'll get students that come in, and they'll come into the building, and they'll look and they'll be like, yeah, how much? Like, it's free, come on in. It's there because it's almost like they're so conditioned to be like baited into a situation and say, hey, wait, well, yeah, hey, you're in here, great. It's only gonna cost you $50 a month and you can get all this macaroni you need. So if we were an innocent bystander, you sit there, we keep inventory levels the way they were, and we ride it out. Who is that benefiting? Does it benefit the student? No, it doesn't, because they're not getting any more food. They're not eating. 70% of college students suffer from food insecurity, right? So that's one of the big reasons. Our median age is 28. When we were in college, when we were doing our undergrad, I never had to worry about where my next meal was coming from. I would just punch my card, go to the DC, and eat whenever I wanted to, right? Because I also had somebody that was helping and funneling money into that card. So again, I was 18, 19, median age 28. So now you've got the choice. Do I buy groceries or do I buy that textbook? Because we all know what a gaffe textbooks are. And Rum, I don't know if you wrote a textbook. I apologize if you did, but this program runs on an open ed resource, an OER, so our textbook's virtual. And Rebecca, heads up, I can't download 5 and 6, but I've asked Cindy in the library. She's gonna let me know tomorrow if she can get that, the chapters 5 and 6.
Thanks.
I didn't forget.
Appreciate that.
You got it. So if we don't do anything, we're talking about just being bystanders at this point, right? If we don't do anything during the pandemic, if we don't increase the amount of inventory of our food pantry, if we don't look for more aid, and there's a ton of federal aid that's coming out there, our grants team is out there looking for every nickel they can get. How does that benefit the student? If we don't do anything, we just sit back on our hands and say, we can make it. We have enough in the tank to make it. How does it benefit the student? Doesn't, right? Take it a step further. How does it benefit the community, our stakeholders? We're sustaining, we're staying here. We're not growing, we're not dropping. How does it benefit the community? Trick question, it doesn't. You don't have to think too hard about it, right? Our neighbors, Augie and Ray's, little hamburger place down the street. Are they seeing as many customers that are leaving our parking lot and going over there? So there's an ancillary effect there as well, where it's hitting them. All right. So that's if we sit on our hands and do nothing. So if we can proactively continue to do what we're doing and invest in our community, there comes a time in which their investment into the community as stakeholders of ours will be reciprocated, and we're going to feel it. And we do feel it every day, because Augie and Ray's little hamburger shop probably has more Goodwin gear hanging on the walls than our bookstore does. I mean, they're huge advocates of the university. And it hits them up for money weekly, right?
No, quarterly, but
Quarterly. and it's generational. It's an organization that, a couple of the nephews or grandnephews took over. And we talked about this in 520, where they have a glorified calculator for a cash register. They don't track inventory without a clipboard and maybe a ledger. And they're gonna try to turn it, and they're gonna try to basically build a more contemporary sustainability model. Because when that company first opened, they were the only show in town. Then a Wendy's popped in across the street, a few decades later. The traffic went down at Pratt, so they still sustain. They have a great reputation, but they need to kind of build some type of strategic plan that's not static, and they're working on it. They, Chris and Mike, they're good guys. They do a lot for the college, a lot for the community, but their model, a successful model, benefits the community, us included. So by doing nothing, we're complicit, and we're not really living up to our mission if we do nothing. You guys following? Any questions? I think I quoted Manwani to death here. I think one of his quotes, did I write this right? Make money and make good. Make money and make good to your stakeholders. So 7 minutes, 40 something seconds. You'll love it. It's worth it. You'll be quoting it for years. I was going to do an exercise in class tonight, which we can do. Let me just run through this little piece of sustainability right here. I just want to finish this up, and then we're going to jump into a sustainability exercise. Are we commercially profitable, right? Our model, is it commercially profitable? Are we going to make money on it? Do we have a niche? Do we have that product that separates us from anything else? Our competitors, will it last in the future? Is it a resource that we can utilize for the long term? And does it give back? So I like to think of this as Barnes & Noble versus library. Barnes & Noble, we buy it, we're gone. Library, we're going back, and we're giving it back so somebody else can use it. And then it's again that pay it forward full type of cycle that's just going to support collectively the good versus individually the good. All right. So we don't have to pair up, and I know we don't have a ton of time because I rambled on for a long time. We talked about SWOT way too long, but it's going to help you for your papers. But let's get a discussion going about if we can balance what a shareholder wants. Okay. Well, we want to make more money. We want to be socially responsible. We do. And what are the trade-offs and the consequences? And how does like Wall Street or / the revenue side of the house really affect that decision? So let's just have a conversation about, if you want to think of an organization where you're trying to play the balancing game, you want to put your strategic plan together, and maybe you're cutting your profits to increase your sustainability short term. Maybe it's a different product we're using, right? Let's pick a company. Somebody pick a company, an organization.
Do you guys have Aldi out there?
Aldi, that was Cynthia's.
Way to go. I didn't see it, Cynthia. I thought about that one too. I am an Aldi freak.
Okay. So what's a way in which we could make more money at Aldi's? Because remember, what Aldi's mindset is kind of that bare bones, right? We're not getting the big expensive side.
Yeah, like low overhead.
Low overhead. We don't have the fancy ads like Stop and Shop and all those good places, right? So, and what's a way in which we can become socially responsible with Aldi's, right? Still make some money, but not jeopardize what we're trying to do, how we're trying to sustain this particular model. Like, What's one thing we could do?
Recycle the boxes.
Perfect. So by recycling, right? And we could even only buy recycled product, we could go that far, but by recycling, we're contributing to a better environment, our carbon footprint drops off. And that's a big thing for organizations like that, because as nice and clean as the boxes we have, what's bringing the boxes to us? Yeah, these big old diesel trucks that are driving in. And so everything we do incrementally will be better, but we're always going to have to counter some things that are kind of out of our control. I mean, we don't have electronic deliver or these electric vehicles that are delivering our product to us. I mean, it's just not feasible yet. We're not there because they don't have the energy and the juice to get that much product to us. Right now, that's the most cost-effective way to do it, is to get that product to us. So going to a full-blown recycling plan for everything that we break down gets recycled. It's not going to cost us a ton more. We're still keeping our profits to where we think they should be, but we're showing an interest in our community and supporting them. What's another way Aldi can save a couple bucks and make a better sustainable model?
Maybe this was a bad one because they already do a lot.
Well, they do, but let's think outside the box. Let's get creative. What are ways in which we could do things to better serve our community, right? What if we went to a 24-hour cycle? Because they don't run 24 hours now.
So this is not bad, but this is like a stretch. But if they took the kind of that Peapod like mentality and did that delivery component, so you're reaching your community and like the accessibility of their product, which is better priced than a lot of other grocery stores. And so those people who don't have access to the store can now get a better priced grocery. So you're connecting to your community, you're getting your product out there, reaching customers that you wouldn't necessarily get if they don't have access to you. So
Great idea.
Also curbside.
Well, it's funny that because of COVID, they missed out on a lot of those sales, and now they're looking at stepping into the market of online ordering and stuff like that, because they realized they did miss out on a lot of revenue when COVID happened.
Well, we had that in Cedar Rapids, at least in Iowa, like you can do online ordering and curbside, and I think the delivery has to happen through, like I don't know,
DoorDash or
is it
something.
DoorDash? Yeah.
So they had a third party delivering for them.
Yes.
So I mean, you're looking at, so let's say that we choose the hill to battle on is we're going to be better for the environment. Okay. We pitched our recycling model. That's going to save us some money, but it's also going to be better for the environment. It's going to reduce our carbon footprint, right? Now we're talking about delivering. So, and I am not like, Joe Earthy Crunchy, but I drive a truck. But now if you were to send a fleet out to deliver groceries, you're increasing our organization's carbon footprint, like how we're contributing to the demise of the environment. So what's another way in which we could satisfy that without contributing to the carbon footprint of our organization?
Electric cars.
We could go Prius electric cars, absolutely right, because we don't need that type of horsepower to deliver groceries. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I mean, if you got like, let's say a truck and you're doing got like 10 orders in one area, that balances out. That's the way to look at it. So,
Well, right. So Sal makes a great point. So logistics, right? So we set up a logistics model, which we're not zigzagging across the state of Connecticut. We run a very linear model, and we service clients based on maybe they're not going to get it the exact time they need it that day. But we're going to say, look, we'll give it to you that day. But for us to remain, both environmentally responsible, fiscally responsible. We're gonna run a pattern, we're gonna run a route, and your route delivers at approximately between 420 and 450. And I think if our customers are using, are our customers for that particular reason, and if we're doing right by them, and if we're giving them the food, the right food, not messing up their deliveries, we're socially conscious about all these things, you're gonna see that that's okay. That's give and take. They'll be okay with that for the most part.
Well, and just to jump on board with that, like knowing the shareholders, the stakeholders of Aldi, you already have to pay a quarter if you want to use their cart. You have to bring your own bags. Like the store already comes, even if you go in person, it comes with stipulations. Like you have to, that you were bringing your own bag there before that was like a statewide thing or whatever. So I think you've got a customer base who's used to, hey, this is how we do it, and they're obliging to that. So I think, like to Sal's point, like creating what plan works for Aldi makes sense to the customers because that's how they've like done their business.
And you hit on a point that I kind of to transition into this. Like, if you could describe an Aldi customer in one adjective, what would it be?
My wife.
Okay, so now it's gonna be a nice.
Thrifty.
Say, what was that?
Thrifty.
Thrifty, right? Or frugal, right? But not, no, because it's the, like, now, I wouldn't do this personally, but like, I have relatives that have no problem at all going to the dollar store to buy something. And I'm like, I don't know, it's like, they don't really specialize in food. I'd rather go to like a grocery store, but, and I'm just, and it's probably canned in the same place right next to the other, but to me, it's like, that's not your thing. To Kate's point, we know what we get with all of them. We know that we're already going in there, we're paying for our cart, and we talked about it again in data, how we walk into Target, what's the first thing you want us to do when we walk into Target? What do they ask us to do?
Get a Starbucks.
No, we're not talking Starbucks.
Log into the Wi-Fi.
Log into the Wi-Fi. Why do they want us to log into the Wi-Fi? They want to track us, right? Aldi's doesn't want to do that. Aldi's wants to sell us a good product at a decent price, right? So we have a unique customer that we should capitalize on. So if we can show them that we're doing it right. Oh, Rebecca, do you have something?
No, sorry, that was me.
No, but if we're doing our end to help the environment, we've got our fleet of, electronic vehicles, the electric vehicles that we're not really, until we have to unload them, hurting the environment, but we're showing them that our model, while it's not the most profitable, is certainly the most sustainable, right? We're not subbing out to some drivers that don't have a vested interest in the customer they're delivering to. These are our folks driving our vehicles at the time we can deliver. So we're capitalizing on a relationship that we've already built inside that we can grow and kind of mimic the P-pods or the Big Y, whatever their system is called. Let's go one more step, just one more step. Don't jump on because it's already 8:35. I know you guys are itching to get out of here. So what's one more thing we can do in our model to help both us and the community?
Did we talk, well, this may be expensive. I can't remember if we said this before, but getting products, especially like produce and things like that from local farmers, local community.
So we didn't really talk about that, but that
could drive up prices, I guess, a little bit. I don't know, but.
All right, but let's consider too now, post-pandemic, right? So you've got a lot of people that are trying to eat healthier right now. We just had a huge conversation with the commissioner for the state in the the president of Food Share, where we're swapping everything over to what they call a SWOT format. So you've got like a stoplight, like a green, a yellow, and a red, or vice versa, red, yellow, green, right? So the green foods, good, eat plenty of them. Produce, poultry, fish, The yellow foods, okay, you need them in your diet, but don't kind of hound on these things. And then your reds are kind of your cheat foods, where they're not really good for you. And what organizations like pantries used to do is that they would sell by poundage. They would distribute in poundage. So right now I can give you a 15-pound bag of food, which will have grapes, veggie burgers, trying to think what's in my fridge over there. Fresh fish, milk, eggs, butter, Cheerios. I'll say that's about 50, maybe even I could throw peanut butter, small peanut butter in there, 15 pounds, right? Before, and now think about that from a sustainability standpoint, a person's sustainability standpoint, that'll get you a lot farther than a 15-pound bag of rice, Chef Boyardee raviolis, Dinty Moore beef stew, and maybe we'll throw in a gallon jug of Arnold Palmer iced tea, right? Now, you can pick up the Arnold Palmer, but don't make that your primary drink for your meals. So it's really cool how the model's put into place. It's caloric versus poundage now. So to that point, if we're looking at what Aldi's doing, yeah, let's partner with our local farmers. Who else is partnering with local farmers? You know, Big Y does. They advertise. That's a huge ad campaign for Big Y. And Maria and Rebecca, Big Y is like probably, I don't know, DeMore Brothers. I think they've been around for maybe 100 years. So it's a kind of a failing market that blew up into a pretty good sized grocery store. But with Aldi, I believe Aldi is a German company, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So they're growing their model. They just didn't pick a street corner and drop a store in there. They've done plenty of market research. They know their community. And I think if they were to partner with local farmers, I know Big Y's had success with it. I'm not really sure about other stores have had success with it or not. But we have a partnership with a couple of farms down the street. And we even had a partnership as a college with farmers that would come in and put produce in the lobby for students to eat, because it's much better than going to the vending machines. So now for us as a sustainability model, that's a piece of it, because you're getting a student that's taking a test, maybe eating an orange or an apple versus eating a donut or a bagel and just living on straight carbs for a couple hours instead of having some legitimate vitamins and energy in them. So you're probably going to score higher on the test. If you score higher, you're more likely to succeed. So, you know, obviously layers down the road. But so anyway, you guys see how from building this up, you can just keep throwing little layers on it and defend your hypothesis. If it works, great. If it doesn't, boom, back to square one. It's not like I'm wrong. It's not like you're doing this real long math problem and then you realize that, you know, you got one of your equations off halfway through it and it throws the whole thing off. No. You're going to have the ebb and flow of this process, and you really want to determine what works best for you, as well as the community, the stakeholders, because it's so cyclical. If one's doing well, the rest are typically doing well. Any questions on that? All right, I just want to talk about some of the things that you're going to be looking at this week when you're writing your paper, okay? So many of which we covered over here, but when you're looking at your external analysis this week for Vernon Road, potential opportunities, expand their core business, exploit new markets, expand product line. We talked briefly last week, maybe you start making school uniforms, right? Maybe that's something that you start doing, because every kid in that area has to wear a school uniform. Diversify into a new business. They had the ability, they have the knowledge of running a business. So maybe you take that square footage and reconfigure it, expand into foreign markets, come across the ocean, enter new related businesses, potential threats, the increase in domestic or foreign competition. We talked about China, change in consumer taste, going with sublimation now versus the dyeing type of setup, rise in or new substitute product, new forms of competition, potential for takeover. We get this thing up and running. Is that other company in town going to come over and buy us? Change in demographic factors, change in economic factors. In a small town, we laid off 56 people. We're contributing to the economic downturn of that particular area, rising labor costs and slower market growth. So those are some potential threats. These are all in the notes for week 3. So when you're putting your paper together, those are some of the items that you want to hit on. We touched on a lot of them over here, okay? So it's not like we're trying to reinvent anything. It's pretty simple stuff. Any questions on that? All right. As much as you hate to hear it, this is our last slide of the evening. So this week's discussion coming up is based on the materials from this particular week. How can organizations incorporate sustainability concept into their business strategy? A lot like our discussion we just had, right? Using resources to validate your position, please consider how organizations balance the needs of their primary stakeholders, their shareholders, their employees, their customers, their community, and how they're going to continue to grow and sustain, okay? That's our discussion board. Particulars aren't up here. You guys have been doing great in discussion boards. 300 words. I don't care if you cite. I don't care if you cite. I really don't. And if you do cite, don't make your citations part of your 300 words, okay? I just want conversations. I really don't care where you got it from. But when you write a paper, I do. So your writing assignment is complete the external assessment of Vernon Road Bleaching and Dyeing Company and answer the question, what are Vernon Road's opportunities and threats? As part of your analysis, explain how you diagnosed the situation that led to your key findings. Included at the end of the project description is a partial list of industry competitors. Again, that week 1, your final, scroll down, last page, it's got a list of your competitors. You can use your SWOT, 4D, or other models you believe support your assessment. Questions on that? Pretty cut and dry. You did a good job so far in the internals, at least audibly. Your papers are hopefully as strong. You know what you're talking about. Now you just got to look at how the outside is affecting our model. Questions? I need to go to my sub notes again. Are you guys good?
Good times. Thanks, friend.
You are very welcome.
Eric, I'm jumping ahead, because we're not here next week.
We are not here next week.
And so you had said like a while back, it's a discussion post is what's next week. Is it also the draft?
You need to submit your draft of your final. You're not working on anything new, as long as you've been working on that, but get me your draft, your skeleton of how you think it's going to shape out. And then you have your week 5 assignment coming up, which is your assignment for your portfolio. Should you choose to use that, but full disclosure, if you don't, you're crazy, because it's tailored to that particular question on your portfolio. So put a little more sweat equity into that one. And it's really, you're looking to pinpoint the 2 strategies that our friends Richard and Henry should have put into play.
And the bones, the draft can be literally any way we want to get it to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you try to be uniform, so
Yeah.
so if you guys all, like, your documents should look identical. You're not sending me, everybody from your team's not sending me an individual
Right.
one. So you're going to submit as a team, but you're each going to submit individually. So your project of whatever you're working on, if you want to submit it in a Word doc, that's great. Just make sure your whole team does it in a Word doc. If you want to do it in a PowerPoint, that's great.
Could our draft be an outline? Is there a specific?
It could be an outline. But you need to have enough detail in it where I can see where you're going.
Okay.
Hannah just rolled her eyes when you said outline. Just want to let you know,
No,
your teammate.
We'll fight about it later on, Hannah. I
I
already,
started outline and then I read PowerPoint. I was like, whoa, whoa. So that's where I rolled my
Well,
eyes.
if
was
you
the
have the
PowerPoint.
basis, if you put your PowerPoint together, it doesn't have to have all of your detailed supporting evidence in it. You're just showing me how you progressed and what you're looking at of how you're going to present your final. It's not like, this isn't a heavy lift, trust me. This is just making sure you're on the right path.
And
And
that's
if you're
doing
totally
two.
off base, I'll send it back to you guys to say, nope, this is what you gotta look, this is what you need to look for.
That's doing 2 weeks.
2 weeks. That's the end of, that's,
Right
actually,
after
that's
Thanksgiving.
due the day before next class. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Before,
The Tuesday after Thanksgiving.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. I just like to
because we
plan
don't
ahead.
meet until the
Yeah.
25th.
Okay, you know.
Or no, we don't meet until we have one more class in December, I believe, right? Or no,
7.
I mean, our next class is December, isn't it?
December 1st.
Yeah,
Yeah.
after tonight. Just the month flew by.
Yeah. Like Thanksgiving's next week. That's wild.
I know. See, I told you guys, 7 weeks, 7.5 weeks.
Just having so much fun.
That's
We
what it
just
is.
love it so much.
Right.
You gonna come back?
Yeah.
Come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you die off December 1st? Or a new member of the
Wherever we
cohort?
are.
Yeah, for the record,
Come on,
I know
Alfred.
your camera's turned, but Kate had to wake Rum up like 3 times during the class tonight. It was so engaging. Not when you guys are talking, but when I was talking. All right, so you have 4 minutes to spare. Look at all the time I gave you. But if you have any questions, reach out during the week. Have a great Thanksgiving. I'll see you guys
You too.
in a month, next month.
Wow.
We good?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye,
Good
guys.
night, thank you.
See ya.
Nice meeting you all.